The yogis suggest that our breath is the link between our conscious and our unconscious minds. They say that the mind rides the breath as a driver rides a chariot. A regular practice of conscious breathing can help you attain many different levels of awareness. Because our breath is so intricately connected to our nervous system, it's important that you recognize whether the way you breathe is stimulating you, causing you nervousness and anxiety, or whether the techniques you are using are calming you down and sedating your nervous system. Pranayama is the word yogis use to describe breathing practices. The word itself translates into extension of energy. The yogis believe that we come into this world with a set amount of breaths for our life. We can either rush through our lives, panting and in the grips of fear, or we can consciously extend the duration of each and every one of our breaths, and therefore our lives. Lie down in Shavasana. Shavasana is a resting position in Hatha Yoga. Your arms are down by your sides, palms face up, eyes closed. The legs are separate, about 1.5 to 2 feet in between your feet, whatever feels comfortable. Initially, when you lay down in Shavasana, you might feel comfortable, and then a few seconds later, you may need to readjust yourself to make sure that you are totally settled and able to remain motionless during the duration of the pose. I'm going to lead you through several breathing techniques. All of these breathing techniques you'll encounter in the practices of Yoga Link. The first series of breaths is to help you to understand the 3 distinct locations of breathing located in the human body. I call these the abodes of breath. The first of these abodes is abdominal breathing. In abdominal breathing, you want to place a block on your abdomen and take deep breaths that actually move the block up and down. When you inhale, the abdomen will swell, the block will rise, and when you exhale, the belly will empty and the block will descend. Now, it's not that your belly is actually breathing in abdominal breathing. It's that your diaphragm is contracting and relaxing. When you breathe in, the lungs expand and the diaphragm pushes down. It contracts into the abdominal region, and that swells the belly, the contents of the abdomen, and the abdomen appears to bloat. When you exhale, the lungs empty, and the vacuum formed by the lungs draws the diaphragm back into its natural resting position. The first abode of breath is abdominal breathing, also known as diaphragmatic breathing. Take a couple more breaths. Feel the block moving up and down, up and down. This is the most sedating of all breathing techniques known to the human body, and it sets the onset of parasympathetic nervous system domination. In other words, it helps you to calm down. This is also the breath that you'll see in children and infants when they're sleeping, and hopefully most adults as well, unless you're really stressed out. The next abode of breath is thoracic breathing. You can take the block out of the way. In thoracic breathing, you're breathing only in the region of the ribs and the lungs. In order to only breathe in the region of the ribs and the lungs, you'll actually have to limit the motion of the diaphragm. Limiting the motion of the diaphragm means you'll be activating your transverse abdominal muscle to prevent the diaphragm from moving. So draw your navel towards your spine, pin it in. That's actually called Tadagi Mudra. Keep Tadagi Mudra, or pond seal,
the transverse activation, while you move the ribs open and shut. This is called thoracic breathing. You won't be able to breathe as deeply because the diaphragm is not able to go through its full range of motion. This type of breathing starts to trigger the sympathetic nervous system, and it actually triggers a cascade that involves the fight or flight response in the body. Keeps you alert, keeps you awake, but you don't want to stay here for too long. Thoracic breathing, the second abode of breath, opening the ribs and closing the ribs. The third abode of the breath is something that you rarely want to involve, which is clavicular breathing. In clavicular breathing, the shoulder blades and the clavicles lift up and shrug up towards your ears. This is the breath that the human body will use in response to fear or terror. By lifting the shoulders and the clavicles up, it helps to open up the last 5% of lung volume. Go ahead and just take a couple of breaths where you're literally shrugging your shoulders all the way up to your ears. And you'll feel how much more breath you get in, but you'll also feel that it makes you pretty tense. Good. Now move your shoulder blades back down and assume Shavasana again. When you combine abdominal breathing with thoracic breathing, you get something called the Yogic complete breath, or abdominal thoracic breathing. This is a very complete and balancing breath. Begin your breath in your abdomen. Inhale, swell the belly. Then that same inhale moves up into the ribs and the lungs, and you'll feel the ribs and the lungs expand before exhaling completely. Inhale, swell the belly. The same inhale is then consciously carried up into the ribs and the lungs, which also swell, followed by a complete emptying and exhalation. Abdominal thoracic breathing. Again, inhale into the belly. Consciously move that breath into the ribs and the lungs so you feel the fullness of the inhalation, followed by a complete exhalation. Inhale, swell the belly, swell the ribs and the lungs. Allow the exhale to be passive. Just allow the breath to empty of its own accord. This is an active inhalation and a passive exhalation. Inhale, the belly swells, and like a wave, it then moves to the ribs and the lungs. And then it completely empties and drains out of the body.
A couple more like that. Actively inhaling, moving the breath as a wave up into the ribs, and a passive exhalation, complete emptying. And again, yogic, complete breath. This will be the breath most used throughout the practices. The next breath is Kapalabhati, which is also known as fire breathing or bellows breath. But I'm going to teach you a super slow version of Kapalabhati. Kapalabhati is similar to the yogic complete breath, except that the inhale and exhale are reversed in terms of their activity.
Kapalabhati is an active exhale and a passive inhale. Watch breath come into your body. Don't try to breathe, just watch breath come in. And then for your exhale, draw the navel towards the spine and get rid of the breath. And then relax the abdomen, and breath will just flood in automatically. And then consciously exhale, squeeze the belly. That's Tadagi Mudra, by the way. Navel to the spine. Release the tension, and breath will just come in. Remain aware. Allow the breath to flood in, and then consciously exhale. Squeeze the breath out. Relax the belly. Allow breath to flood into the body. Conscious exhale, squeeze the breath out of the abdomen. You might even feel the pelvic floor muscles becoming involved a little bit. Release them. Passive inhale. Active exhale. Kapalabhati. The next breathing technique is called yogic rhythmic breath. In yogic rhythmic breath, we'll often be observing it when the heart rate is very, very high. Yogic rhythmic breath is the homeostatic coordination between the heart's pacing and the breath's pacing. So right now, all I want you to do is just observe that breath is moving in and out, and sense and feel the movement of blood throughout your body.
There's a few ways that you can sense the movement of blood. One is to actually zero in on the location of your heart and feel that internal throbbing within the chest. Now, if that's eluding you, you can also focus in on your neck, the carotid arteries on the sides of the neck. Sometimes you'll feel the throbbing there. You can also feel for it at the wrists. Sometimes it's even more helpful to touch the thumb and the index finger together. You can also feel the pulse at the tip of the thumbs.
Now observing the coordination of the breath and the heart simultaneously. Yogic rhythmic breath. The next breathing technique that I'd like you to practice and to be aware of is Kumbaka. Kumbaka is the cessation of breath either at the end of an inhale or at the end of an exhale. The breath is divided into 4 parts. There's an inhalation, there's a pause between inhalation and exhalation, there's an exhalation, and there's a pause between exhalation and inhalation. Inhale till you're full. Yogic complete breath. Inhale in that wave. And then hold the breath. This is Antaranga Kumbaka. Exhale completely. Do not breathe in, hold your breath. The breath is out of the body. This is called Bahiranga Kumbaka, or exhalation retention. Inhale again, yogic complete breath. Fill your belly, fill your lungs. Hold the breath. Antaranga Kumbaka, holding the breath. Exhale completely. Totally empty, absolutely empty. Pause. Retain the breath. This is Bahiranga Kumbaka. Again, inhale till you're full. Hold the breath. Exhale completely. Pause. Kumbaka. Yoga complete breath. Fill. Pause. Hold the breath. Exhale completely. At the end of the exhale, Kumbaka. Pause. 2 more times. Inhale. Fill. Spread the lungs. Pause, hold. Kumbaka. Exhale completely. Kumbaka, pause. Good, release the hold. The last breathing technique that I'd like you to be aware of is called bare attention, or the native breath. In bare attention, or the native breath, simply observe the natural amount of breath that your body needs in order to function. This is a breath that's totally uncontrolled by you, but it is totally observed. So you simply watch that breath moves in and breath moves out. You simply place a minimum amount of attention on the act of respiration without doing anything. The breath is something that you are constantly aware of, but it is not something that you are trying to manipulate or dominate or order around. You simply watch what your body needs and see that happening. The breath moves in, Often there's a pause. There's a natural Kumbaka. The breath moves out. Often there's a pause, a Kumbaka, happening quite natively before the body takes its next breath. Bear attention, or native breath. This is most like the breath that we have in our sleep. It is often very sedating, very tranquilizing. Please return to any of these pranayamas as you like, spending more time with each one in turn. Use them as a way of preparing yourself for the practices, or use them as a way of winding down after the practices. I hope you enjoy them. Thanks for joining me. Namaste.